Hey, Stephen Young here doing the junkyard crawl at Burniston Auto Wrecking in Burniston, Massachusetts. This is a Triumph TR4. These were new for 1962 and were built through 1966 as the TR4. The TR5 would replace it, but again, these things were groundbreaking cars. These were the first Triumphs with roll-up windows. The TR3 that came before still had side curtains, old school, and these were much more civilized cars. Now, Triumph advertising said, our new Triumph won its first medal standing still. And what they meant was at the 1961 Earl's Court Motor Show in London, it was awarded, the Triumph TR4, the gold medal for quality construction. And of course, that was a medal, not metal. Speaking of metal, these things are not aluminum, they're steel, and boy, do they rust. On this one here, we can see that the rear quarter panels at some point were patched up with plastic filler right here that's peeling off, but you got to wonder who would do such a thing. Well, I'll tell you, somebody who owned this car when it was only worth a couple $100, but look at that bodywork. That's not factory, but just shows you how much these things are prone to rusting. And again, this Bondo is way thicker than a credit card, which is the golden rule, is never thicker than a credit card. This stuff is like almost a ½ inch in some areas. But again, the beauty of the TR4 was, again, the roll-up windows. You can see right here. Here is the a nice little door handle, but here's the roller. Yeah, that's not gonna go up today. Oh, look at this. Still works. That's the one thing on this car that does work, the roll-up side windows. But again, the TR3 would have had the curtains that popped into little holes. Now, these were all manual transmissions, 4-speed. Some had overdrive, Leacock to Nominville. This one has, I think, a pretty optimistic 120-mile-an-hour speedometer. You can see right there, 120. Top speed on this, probably about 105, I would guess. But interesting stuff. I mean, these were sold in the North American market, America and Canada, USA, and also in Europe, where they had left-hand, right-hand drive. And notice this, the turn signal indicator right here, the pod that it lives in has screws on the top and the bottom. And simply by taking these two pieces and switching them around and changing the selector, the canceller, you can have the same piece either for a left-hand drive North American unit or right-hand drive European. So that's how British Leyland, which owned Triumph at this point in time, saved money. And again, they call this a banjo steering wheel. And the whole thing with these sort of wire spokes is that they help to isolate the grip from the vibration of the car. And that was the whole thing about these, the banjo steering wheel. And again, padded dashboard, a little urethane stuff going on there, a small concession to safety. If you hit that, it won't be quite as ugly as hitting a piece of metal, which would have been something found on TR3s, the car that came before this. And unlike the TR3, which had a cut down side door area right here, the TR4 had a full height sill line right there with a small dip, a reference to the the TR3, but certainly a more closed structure. Now, the big deal on this is under the hood. V8s, no, the TR8 in 1981 would get the 3.5 liter aluminum General Motors V8, but that would be a couple decades after these things were made. Under the hood here, we will find, there it is, the 2.1 liter, 105 horsepower pushrod inline 4. But kind of cool, see the aluminum intake manifold with the twin carburetor flanges? Yeah, these things actually had twin side mount SU carburetors. Now you might think, well, that was a special power option, right? No, it was standard equipment. They were very small carburetors, but again, 2 carbs would feed these 4 cylinders with more even fuel mixture distribution than any single carb ever could. And being side draft mounted versus down draft, the hood height was maintained. Now keep in mind, 1953 and 4 Corvettes also used side draft carburation as a means to keep the hood line low. Look at that little tiny radiator right there. I mean, it doesn't make much heat, so it doesn't need too much heat dissipation. But something kind of cool, a little nod to the Spitfire fighter plane of World War II, is the fact that when the carburetors are on that, there's sort of an oblong air cleaner that's a little too tall to go under the hood. So you see that blister right there on the passenger side. That blister on the underside of the hood is matched by the surface of the hood, where the TR4 has the trademark blister right there. Just a cool little touch right there. And again, I believe it was the Spitfire propeller fighter plane of World War II. They had blisters like this on it, but that was just a cool little muscle hump right there. Again, asymmetrical styling. There's not one on this side. And it would have been kind of a little bit bogus if Triumph had added one here just to have symmetry, but they were functional and they had it only on that side. So it was a talking point and a cool detail. Now these cars were available, as was the TR3, with disc brakes on the front. But here's something kind of interesting. These are solid rotors on these no vented discs. Again, these are cars were lighter than, you know, American cars by far. So the solid rotor, which might be more prone to heating up and warping on like a Lincoln Continental, was just fine in this 2,100 pound TR4. But something we see on this one here is no wheel studs. These are untapped holes, whereas on this one, well, look at this, there's studs. Look at that. Well, the whole point there is that this car was originally built with steel bolt-on wheels. This one had the optional wire wheels. And in that case, you would have a bolt-on hub with a screw-on flange in the middle that would take the wire wheel. So that's the difference between the wire wheel hub and the bolt-on wheel hub. Speaking of bolt-on wheels, this is one of the rims from this nasty TR4 right here. There's the steel wheel, these three little tabs, the hubcap would pop onto that. And check this out, this is a Dunlop Gold Seal. Again, Dunlop, one of the better names in racing tires. So this tire, when it had tread on it, was considered a high-performance sports car type tire with a little white wall effect going on right there. But again, Dunlop Gold Seal, a premium tire, like a Michelin today. Now, as we come around to the other side of this TR4, I believe Michelotti was the stylist on these cars. I may be wrong, but an Italian design house did this for Triumph. And again, a beautiful little car. Not much rollover protection on these things. I mean, now this one is compromised by rust, but you know, you wouldn't want to go on your bean in this thing. But again, they have such a low center of gravity. These stuck pretty well. I would say if you slid around a corner, hit a curb, that would be bad news. But as long as you didn't hit anything, these would just slide and rarely would flip. So that's the good part. Now, the rear axle is a live axle with leaf springs. But look at the hump right here in the back floor, right there to clear the differential center section at full jounce or compression right there, that bump to prevent the axle housing from smacking the floor. So again, the design on this thing is very compact. And again, here's the rear quarter panel right here, this lovely piece of plastic sculpture right there. Now, here's the thing. These cars, again, were built from 62 through 66. And of course, the TR250 or the would arrive in 1967 with a 2.5 liter six popper. But this is kind of cool. This is Road and Track magazine, April 1969. And it has a survey of Triumph TR4 owners inside. Now again, when this came out in 69, these cars were like 3 years out of production, but you know, being Road and Track, they're about enthusiasts. And here it is right here. Here's the story. Road and Track Owners Survey. After the new wears off, one owner's experience. And here on the bottom right, it says here, a total of 136 owners of big Triumphs participated in this survey. Most of them drive between 10,000 and 15,000 miles a year. Almost all of the owners of the newer models bought their cars new and almost without exception use them for daily transportation. It says 39% participate in rallies, 20% drive in slaloms, gymkhanas, or autocross events. A total of 56% of the owners said they drove their cars hard, and it shows. Now here's the downside. We see on the right how dealers rate with owners. When you buy a car and there's no dealer network to support it, you're in trouble. We see here they compared MG, Volkswagen, Porsche, Volkswagen, and Triumph, and down at the right corner, number 33%, people said that service was poor, which is the biggest number of all of them. So again, the Triumph dealer network in the United States wasn't strong. And the sad thing is, once these cars fell into the hands of their second and third owners, they never went to the dealer, which is why you start seeing home brewed repairs like this. So this is the story of the Triumph TR4. Again, in 1980 and 81, the TR8, the shape of things to come with that 3.5 liter V8, took the TR7 of 77 up and really added some power. But again, they're very rare cars. But back in the 60s, these were strictly 4-cylinder or 6-cylinder pushrod powered sports cars. They weren't muscle cars by any stretch, but again, you don't need big power to have fun in a little car like this. So that's the story of the TR4, rust in peace, a car that won its first medal standing still, and this is going to stand still, I think, forever, right here at Bernstein Auto Wrecking. Thanks for watching the show, and we'll be back tomorrow with more.